Good morning. How are you today, Daniel?
So I'm really excited about this meeting because I know it's going to be a wonderful meeting, and the people that will be listening the podcast will be fascinated with what you are doing.
Absolutely. I think it goes both ways. We had the opportunity to meet during a Mind Valley event where we were talking about technology, and most of it was related to businesses. But I think the key was that is related to any business and any educational pathway that we decide to go through.
Yeah.
And during our meeting, I think it was curious. You mentioned that we had commonalities. And those commonalities, strangely enough, when I saw your LinkedIn, were like, oh, aviation, Air Force. I don't know if we have commonalities, but after our first chat, I think it became very clear we are on the same path.
Yeah,
Tell me a bit more about yourself, Daniel.
a little bit more. So I have been flying fighter jets during 30 years, and then I moved to the business environment, and I have been working with the aerospace industries in many different projects. And now I'm writing regulations for the aerospace in my country. And I also have meetings like the one that we are talking. And actually, last week I have another one with the lawyer of the name is Colegio Abogados Aeronautical Law. It's a college that is building a community about the aviation law. So, and I have been discussing something very interesting with all of them about how can they break their mind limitations to see the beauty in everything they have to do in the future. So it has been very amazing.
This is definitely the path. And we talk about accelerating, and I think we're going to go in more detail, accelerating learning, especially in high demand and high concentration of knowledge, like the aerospace. But it's a transferable skill because how you've learned, I think that's one of the things we need to touch upon. How you've learned had to have a level of responsibility that not many people would take on board. And you needed to open your mindset in order to absorb all that information. Tell us a bit about how you learned and how you think you can help other people do the same.
Okay, I'm going to start with a metaphor that I believe you will love what I will tell you. Imagine young Elizabeth, kite in hand, dreaming of floating above the clouds and looking at the sky with limitless curiosity. This curiosity and insatiable thirst to understand the why of everything was nurtured by her parents, who guided and motivated her to accept her challenges with critical and innovative thinking. This foundation made her not just a pilot of her own life, but a visionary for STEM education, facing global challenges like climate change, food security, healthcare, and more. In this story, flying symbolizes the potential of STEAM to address life problems.
Wow. I think that could be our vision. Absolutely. This is such an amazing, Daniel. The moment I met you, I knew there was so much going on and how you sparkle so many interests, especially in the educational side. Like you said, it is expansive, not just for one sector, is all the other sectors. And the curiosity. I think you nailed it when you said curiosity, isn't it? That's one thing that us as human beings should never stop having in order to learn fast and develop the skills we need in any sector. I think that metaphor is just a beautiful poem to me.
and for example, when the other day when we have been talking about the STEAM education, I was researching on the internet what were the main contributions from STEM to the global society, and I found three. and I included in the metaphor, but for example, climate change and environment sustainability, we have the optimization of solar panels and wind turbines, and I believe UK has a lot of development in this area.
Absolutely.
And for example, in healthcare and disease control, I found the rapid development of the COVID-19 vaccine has been doing by mixing many education skills to build the vaccine in a short time period.
Absolutely.
Also, the food security and agriculture, the precision agriculture, using drones and using AI technology to monitor the crop and to grow in a better way and to optimize all the resources used to grow the things. And when you told me about the STEM education, I say, oh, that's very interesting. And you know, I have been thinking this morning that when I was young, maybe in 1990, more or less, when I have been flying, I started to think why the airplanes are having a lot of accidents. And I did a research when I was in the Air Force, and I found out that during 10 years, we lost half of the Air Force, half.
How come?
In 10 years. So I say the same, and I say, hey, if I can solve that problem, so I will save life, I will save resources, and I will save many situations that we don't want to happen in the future. So I decided to start reading the 100 investigation, but I say it will be too much for me alone. And I just did the model for one or two, and I read the whole investigation, and I found the common parameters, and then I built a model to extract the information from that investigation, and then I teach 3 other people, young people, younger than me, very young, to tell them, do you want to go with this challenge? If we can find the real reason why this is happening, we are going to solve a big problem in the future. They say yes, and we did that in 6 months. We recovered normally when we doing accident investigation, we use number, but we tell the story like a book. When you read a book, this is something similar, and you see some data, but at this time, we have never combined all the data, just only one accident. The 100 will be just one, the 100 will be just one big accident. Wow. So we calculate all the parameters and convert many common data to data that we can count. And then everything together, I use SPSS. At this time was a statistical tool that I use it to discover a mathematical model to understand what will be the next accident. And we found that based on that data, we create a mirror with the numbers and with the data to compare every current flight against that mirror to see how close they are to the accident mirror. And based on that, we discovered that there will be another 8 in the coming year. And when I present that, everybody was, oh, what are you doing? I don't understand. I don't believe what you are saying. And then the statistics start to move. The first accident, the second one, the third accident, and before the fourth one, the one of the big generals in the Air Force called me and he said, tell me what will be the next accident. And I say, the next accident will be maybe in 10 or 15 days. It will be a helicopter in this area, and it will have a problem we will have a broken material in flight. And it will be a fatal accident. And he said, no, you are kidding. And I said, this is what the numbers told me. And more or less 10 days or 20 days, boom, the accident passed. And he called me, how do you do that? And I say, the numbers are telling telling us that we are making many mistakes. And if you want, I can explain you what do we have to do to stop these patterns, because there were many patterns built up without knowing that everything you have an event, the event has some clues that will go to the next event and so on.
Wow.
And we have a meeting with all the generals, but I say at this time, if I am going to explain them alone, maybe they are going to kill me.
Oh, no. That is a bit of background as well. Okay.
Yes.
First of all, is where are you based? Because some people won't understand why you said that. That's a big thing. And the second one is what you're predicting is beyond just seeing trial and error. Is you knew from your module, which is a passion of mine, maths. That's my background as teacher, and you kind of modeled on the problems that were arising from the previous data plus the current data that you found out using a mathematical model. And this is where STEM comes into play and how relevant it is. And the fact that you attracted two young adults to join you in finding out what happens made the difference as well, because they're probably seeing from a different perspective alongside your many years of expertise, and you were able to impart with your knowledge to them.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have a different background, when you said it, well, you feel like I'm predicting, like you're almost like astrology, let's call it.
Yeah.
I bet they were a bit scared, because I would be. When you were telling me the story, I had goosebumps, because you didn't just predict, you gave a degree of assertiveness that will happen very soon. And within 20 days, that came to fruition. So you can imagine it's alarming almost. So tell me how, number one, so people have an idea why you said that you were fearful for your own life, given that you were predicting so close. Give the listeners an idea where you are from and why this was something bigger than you could handle at the time.
So I'm from Colombia.
Yeah.
Colombia is in South America. It's a beautiful country. We have 50 million people, and we have and people here is very interesting, because we have been suffering a lot of time because of many different politics, environment, and so on. But we have grown people that is very strong, and we learn how to defeat the current situation that we are facing, and this is who we are. But in my case, Daniel, the story that I told you about the accident investigation, I follow maybe 5 steps. By telling you the story, I started to understand what were the fundamental truths that were behind the accident rate that we have been suffering. What were the challenge assumptions? How can we reconstruct the idea that we have found? How to create potential innovation or solutions, and how to create human connection, because at the end, everything that we do have to be related with human. We can use machines, we can use software, we can use technology, but at the end, if we don't rely on human connection, we are going to spend more time than normally, because at the end, people is going to be supporting you or looking to another way. And I prepare an example for you to interact with you using the 5 fundamental, the 5 critical points to understand what can we do to empower what can we empower our children to shape a sustainable future, because I believe this is what you are doing.
Absolutely.
And when I talk about fundamental truths, I thought, how can we teach our children the core values and principles that will guide them through their life. Because when we realize what are the real values and the values that I live every day, it will be easy. And I say, how am I doing that? Because if I'm going to talk to you, you want to understand how am I doing that, and I say, leading by example. This is very important because the kids, in the same way as I discovered with the accidents, creating a mirror that describes you how the accident patterns through 10 years. You also create a mirror for your kids to see if they want to be like you or if they don't want to be like you. And normally, because they are watching you every day, so they are going to try to imitate you. And this is very important. So the example that you will be giving to all of them. And I thought one specific example that you can use in today's society will be to start being brutally honest with yourself, because normally we try to invent something to try to attract people that you want to be with them or whatever, but you don't tell the right story. You tell some kind of lies, but when you start to say, no, I'm going to be brutally honest, because if I show you who am I in the real environment and who I have in my brain and what can I do in real life, so it will be easy, because then you don't, I will not push you to imagine something that is not true. Also, when talking about the core values and principles, try to do open conversations with your kids to talk about values. For example, when watching a movie and see a person lying to the other one, discuss the consequences and of the value of honesty, of doing in the right way or doing in the wrong way. And also, if you want to teach the values, another way to do that is to celebrate small acts. Every time they did or they do something great, it's time to celebration, because then you will be reinforcing the values and then you will be empowering them to continue doing more than that. And I want to use an example because you are a technology, you are passionate about technology, to ask a question.
Technology education, yes.
Yeah, technology education. Have you ever played with Lego bricks?
Absolutely.
Okay, when you build with Lego, do you start with a big structure or with individual bricks?
Step by step, one by one, brick by brick, smaller bricks.
Okay, and this is the way we can build this is the way we can teach values and principles, because this is important. What do you think about that?
I think it is the model that we already support. The reason is, when you are teaching young children how to model on those values, is giving them the power of the butterfly effect. When you start mentioning is what are the consequences, for example, of a problem solving if you make a silly mistake before. It's not that the problem is completely wrong, but the aftermath won't give you the right answer. So how can you reverse engineer to change those values? So the same as math problems, we see it in real life. So if you do something today, you might create a different result tomorrow. It could affect your next colleague. It could affect the way you think in the future. And we model based on our strategies of learning, which means as long as you have resilience and you build on that resilience, you build on those values, you build on the persistence of wanting to be better or to better that problem, they will see those values building like a brick, exactly as you mentioned, but we probably put it as a butterfly effect in our case, because it does have an aftermath that is related to a previous era. And that kind of builds the values that young children will develop over time.
Okay.
And the brick model is very, I think it's very relatable to young people because they play Roblox at some point as well. So if it's not the actual Lego at the early stage, they definitely play Roblox at the later stage. So that building block really resonates with what we actually doing and we can use as an example as well. So thank you for that, Danielle.
Okay, and the second one is to challenge the assumptions. We have already discovered the fundamental truths, then to challenge the assumptions, and is to encourage your young people to break the status quo, because we have a lot of information. Some of the information is true, and another information is part of the information, and maybe a huge one is false information. And how can we do? How can we create something to be better in the future, to help the humanity to solve global big problems, if we don't have the right information? And I'm going to use the fighter pilot mindset to try to help you to understand what I'm talking about. We as a pilot embrace precision, we analyze scenarios, and we stay calm under pressure. When I mention embrace precision, maybe you mentioned before, when you want to embrace precision, the key here is to ask the right question, a specific right question to the kids to understand what they want to do. Because if we don't have that specific information, maybe they are going to say something very big, but we need to have the focus. We have to train them to focus on the little and small thing that they want to develop or discover. And when we start to talk with them about the precision of the things that we want to obtain, maybe a good idea will be to ask, why not? Because sometimes we just follow the conversation, and just when you ask why not, it's like opening the mind to why he's asking me that, why not? And they will find a better answer to support the idea, or to say, you are right, maybe this is not the way to go. The other one is to analyze scenarios. When we have to go to the battlefield, we have to run different simulations to see all the different situations that we will be encountering. Why do we do that? Because we have to train our mind to constantly running scenarios, because when we are in the real battlefield, sometimes what we create in the simulation will be totally different to what we see. And if we don't have our mind trained to do that, so maybe we will lose the time, and maybe we will lose our life. And this thing can be very important for kids, because this is what we have in our life. This is normal, because we start to do something and we fail. And what are we going to do? How are we going to stand up and to see what was the real issue here, and what do we have to correct to obtain the results? And a practical example that you can use, or the parents that are listening to the podcast, will be to discuss with your kids. For example, if you set up that bedtime is 8 p.m., discuss with them what will happen if they choose to go earlier, or what will happen if they choose to go maybe at 9 or 10. What will be the outcomes of doing that? This is something simple. Create an scenario where they have to start thinking, because my intention with this podcast is to show you that you have a wonderful business situation to create the curiosity for the kids that will decide what are they going to do in the future. And Another very important thing when you are challenging assumption is to stay. For us, it's very important when I was flying, because sometimes to make a decision at 800 kilometers meters over the ground with difficult conditions in the terrain is something that you have to be clear. Your mind has to be very open to say yes or not, because if you make a mistake, so maybe you can be without fuel to come back to your home base. And how can you inspire the children today to think in that particular mindset? Have you ever heard a popular saying or belief and wondered if it is actually true? This is a question for you.
That is that status quo that you just mentioned, in going back to the initial, because you gave several examples. I'm trying to see if I remember all of them. Definitely, when you give different scenarios is key, because children learn very quickly by imagination.
Yeah.
And this is not exclusive to children. It's just that as adults with life, we kind of forgotten as well. By the way, we work with both sides, and it's important to know this is not exclusive to children. It's including children, but also adults need to look at that stretch of imagination when we're looking at different scenarios. And I think you put it really, really well. What are the consequences? For example, the sleeping time. What are the consequences of sleeping a bit later or earlier? And we go a little bit into psychology almost, and kind of give those scenarios to those children to ensure that they know the consequences. And it could be even a trial and error. Probably not during a school day, but possibly over the weekend. Say, okay, over these 2 days, I want you to sleep late as you want and as you wish, and let's see the consequence on Sunday and see how it works. Friday you sleep late, Saturday you sleep late, but we still wake up at the same time as if you go into school. And let's see how the mood will change. Let's observe what are the changes in your brain and the changes in your mood and the changes how the day goes. Because if you're tired, then the parents can kind of model on that and say, oh, we're going to do certain activities that they actually enjoy, but they're so tired that they don't take advantage of those. And I think it's modeling that perspective of the consequences, but without they have the imagination, but without the actual experience on top, it makes it different. And I think when you mention simulation in an aviation scenario, you have many simulations of possible outcomes. A lot. And that is the key. Once they experiment, trial and error, obviously not in real situations. We can do that with sleep situation with children, and they very soon realize they miss opportunities because they're too tired. And then they'll say, well, my parents are right, because tomorrow we're going to do something different, and I don't want to lose that opportunity. They won't say it exactly like that, but you'll see a change in behavior very quickly. And that's the modeling I believe we should go for. Yes, you're going to say something.
And you know something, based on what you are saying, talking about the going to bed at 8 p.m., sometimes we create some kind of limiting belief that we don't want to change. And that's it. Why? And nobody understands, but this is inside our mind. And the main important focus when you challenge an assumption is to understand what are your limiting beliefs. Because as soon as you understand what are your limiting beliefs, you will start to ask, can I change it? So if I change, as you say, okay, if I can go to bed at 10 p.m. instead of 8 p.m., what will happen? So start to ask questions to see how can this simple change can help him to be better or to have a bad day the next day.
Definitely. And that those assumptions come not just for the child themselves, but the parents. Because if we break those barriers, because some of us are hardwired to think, oh, my parents did that to me, it worked, so I'm going to do the same to my children. And they have this way of saying, you do as I say, rather than having a conversation. And I think that's really important, because then we start breaking barriers, not just at the earliest stage, with the sleep, we start breaking barriers and seeing the full potential of that child, breaking those limiting beliefs that, oh, if I sleep early, what is the positive outcomes, and look at the cons of sleeping earlier, which there's not many, because our brain really needs that sleep no matter what. But putting in context, it is key to have those conversations as well when they are doing something that, for instance, is not so well perceived within the household, or the values of the household. It's better to have those conversations about scenarios. How do you think that, let's say, your brother or sister felt when you said something like that? How would you feel if it was you? Would you like that? It's so smaller things that will help the child develop critical thinking. And that critical thinking is so much more valuable than we making decisions for them. Most of the time, it is a risk. Oh, you're going to be this in the future, or you're going to be that in the future, rather than say you can be all of it, but let's have a conversation about it. The why you want to do it, the reason behind it. And it doesn't need to be a philosophical conversation that goes on and on and on. It could be just something that sparkles their mindset. And then in the future, by the time they get to asking questions themselves. And I think we ventured on our first chat about taxonomy and the questions we can use with taxonomy.
Yeah.
And I think that is what sparkles everything, because the more you have open questions and conversations and not bring too many emotional charge. I wouldn't say no emotions, because obviously we are human beings, and that's the bonus of having emotion, is just not allowing the emotions to take over, but giving the opportunity for the child to have that conversation, even if it's something that is out of our scope. But then we break our own assumptions. We don't know what they're thinking in that moment in time. And all of that kind of brings out what their personality really is, and how we can mold them to see different scenarios at school, in a relationship environment with their friends, with the family dynamics, with the values they can have. And that can be really molded by questioning, without making them feel like they're being put on the spot, but they have perspective, and they have their views to why they did it or why they don't want to do it. And this is puzzles, like you mentioned before. I'm very visual, by the way, and I see the puzzles of this conversation building up. And trust me, I would say this with and it sparkles my mindset, definitely.
And you know, when you mention scenarios, last year I have been doing simulated scenarios. Remember that I told you that I have been helping the civil aviation to introduce a new way to fly?
Yes.
Before we say, okay, we can do that, we create simulated scenarios, and we create the environment to fly in a simulator under the new conditions, and we evaluate how was the behavior of the pilots and the whole system. Every time we create one simulated scenario was different from the other one, and also was better.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I was in the 4 simulated scenario, and it was totally amazing.
Wow.
So I say, how this thing is happening? Because so since I started from the beginning, I see how the people is improving. And I told you that because maybe this is something very important for your audience to understand and to try and error to see if this is the right way or the wrong way. And this is the main idea that I want to have you in mind for the short future.
Yeah, for our conversation for the future. And it's just the molding. And you're going back to your initial conversation about, we need to see impact for the future, in environmental, in technology, in how we actually become better humans with the right values to use the technology available. And we need to start thinking about how our children will be the impact of the future. We can't think ahead of us, but we can think in the present how we can support them, so they make better choices now for the ripple effect in the future, and without having to direct them. So per se, because we always wanted to be engineers, we don't say all of you have to be engineers, but give them the tools to select and to see the potential of having more scenarios in front of them, and giving them the experiences that are in front of them, and to bring more open-mindedness into the family. I think that is amazing. What you mentioned before is like, why not expand the horizons and change the mindset for the full potential they can be,
for the full potential
of
the kids and for the family, because this exercise will be for all of the family.
Yeah, it's intergenerational, isn't it?
Yeah,
because then I think there isn't a singularity in that. I think is the I heard recently, we have to think as one, and more than ever, I think the family needs to think as one as well, and how each component of the family can help to mold their future, and subsequently the future of others. Definitely.
Okay. The next step will be to reconstruct ideas, and life is about learning and evolving. How to encourage them to learn from their experience and to always seek ways to improve. This is what we have been talking just a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
And using an exponential mindset, I'm going to use this mindset in this specific step. The 3 keys to reconstruct ideas could be celebrate failure, because if we see failure as something wrong, that we don't want to fail anytime, maybe we're choosing the wrong way, because when we fail, we learn. And this is the best way to improve. And if you fail soon, that will be better. And that will teach, for example, one practical example is to when you teach your kids how to ride a bike, because it's okay, let's try. And I remember when I have three children, and I teach the 3 of them to ride the bike, and one was like taking him from the back of the seat of the bicycle, and I take them for maybe 100 meters, and then I release my hand, and he continued riding the bike, and he said, "Are you having me?" And I said, "No." And then he went to the ground. He said, why you release me? And I said, "Why you ask me?"
Why you asking me? I think he didn't ask again. Just went with it.
And another way to thinking based on an exponential mindset is always ask what's next. Because when we following the example of riding the bike, as soon as you learn how to ride the bike, what will be the next step for your kid in the coming future? But not from your point of view, but from their point of view. This is very, very important to ask them, okay, now you know how to ride a bike. What will be the next step? Just an open question to see how is he going to answer. And the other one is the one that I used in the beginning, and that you bring that term to the conversation: embrace curiosity. This is very important to foster a mindset of endless possibilities. Because when we train our kids to be intellectually curious, that will be fantastic, because it's something that will be in their minds all the time. And this embracing curiosity train them to think beyond the present and envision greater potentials. And how can we teach our kids to create an exponential mindset? Because this is the most important question. Remember that we started and asked you about the Lego. Remember the Lego bricks, and you say yes. And the easiest way will be once you have taken apart the structure and decide what to build, and you build whatever you decide to build, ask your kids what will be the next building construction that you will be doing. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Okay. And this is the part that they can build up as they go along and realize, oh, I had in my mind, let's say usually they build houses or a car or something that they can use as part of the garden setting, whatever that is. They already have an image in their head. That is where curiosity meets engineering. And they might not have the actual words for it, but it is there. They are engineering a new world in front of them with those Legos. And that's the curiosity part. That's the engineering part. That's the part that most young people and even adults don't realize. We are creators by nature.
Yeah.
And that's when we see scenarios and we apply scenarios consistently.
And when we start to building a small construction with Legos, in the beginning, we create something simple. But as soon as we continue doing that, will be more complex and complex and complex. And that will be very important for them to open their mind to see that they can build things that they have never imagined, from the simple to the complex, and understanding the way they build from simple to complex, that will give them the power to see what can they learn to build something different in the future.
And he opens so many possibilities. I think that analogy of the Lego and understanding how we can exponentially open our minds through questioning and maintaining the curiosity will build the young people of the future, which have endless possibilities and pathways in their careers. And that is something you cannot measure until you see the success, for example, of a nation. Let's say it's Colombia or it's here in UK. You can only measure once you've seen there's no shortage of qualified people in a certain field, because people can easily either go through the qualification of the future or the current necessity of that country, or you'll see a difference in terms of the development of the country. As an example, Dubai, that it's grown exponentially in less than 20 years. So that is a great example of open-mindedness and having exponential mindset. No one believed they could build anything in the desert. Zero. It's just a desert. Now you have everything in one place alone. So that is great examples when exponential mindset really takes form, I think. And we should model that as well.
Okay, the next step will be potential innovation or solution. So we have already started with the fundamental truth, with a challenge assumptions, to reconstruct the idea that we want to build in the future, and now is potential innovation or solutions. And this is something that we have been talking in the last conversation, that the world is changing rapidly because of technology. Technology is pushing us to go outside of our boundaries, and we have to equip our children with the tools to adapt, to be ready to adapt to different environments and different situations faster than normal, faster than we normally use. And to understand this, I'm going to use an abundance mindset, because in this case, normally we have, during many, many years before, we have our education teach us that we live in a scarce world, the world of scarcity. But when we think about technology, we are thinking, we are teaching the people to think in an abundant mindset, that if we don't have this right now, we can create a new one. That's it. And the main, so the trick is to foster that potential innovation or solution using the abundant mindset will be to focus on solving the problems. And you know, in the world, we have three different types of people. Maybe 90% of the people, 100 people, 90 people will be very focused on see the problems in everything.
Yeah.
And that's good
Yeah.
because we need to have that information. Maybe 4 or 6 people will be able to envision something to solve that problem. So we have like 96, but only 4 will be able to solve the problem. And this is what we have in our hand. Focus on solving the problem is very important because if we focus on see the problems, oh, that's good. We need that information for us. If we focus on visioning how to solve the problem, that's very important. But the most important is to act. We have to do something right now. And also another way to create an abundant mindset to develop potential innovation or solution is gratitude. Because gratitude is very important to evaluate. Every day we have something to say thank you. Many things happen during the day, but we have been trained to see only the worst part of everything. And to see the brightest is difficult. Children to see that. And this is very important in today's environment with this rapidly change environment that we are having. And that will help them to envision innovation or solutions and to encourage solution-based thinking. For example, if they have a toy and the toy breaks, instead of buying a new one, do a brainstorming with your kids to see what can we do with this broken toy instead of buying a new one. Maybe they can create a new toy.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. I love that concept, because I think the disposable society we create is based on that. I remember when I was young in Lisbon, and we used to make our own roller cards from scratch. I don't know where we found this roll with circles inside. I don't know what engineering was that we used to find them everywhere, and used to make our own wooden cars, roller cars, put a string on it, and off we go down the slope. And that's the creativity that is required. Is no scarcity, is abundance of everything. Depends how you think how to do it. We could see, I believe most of us, if we realize, we could be probably competing with Elon today.
yeah.
Because we were building and we didn't need electricity. We just needed a slope.
Okay, you bring the perfect example. And talking about the Lego, I use that analogy when I am in a meeting with many different people, and they face a problem, and they start to say, we need this budget, we need this software, we need these people, we need before starting to solve the problem. And the Lego teaches us in an easy way how to change our mindset. Instead of looking that we don't have anything to solve the problem, just to imagine building a Lego solution with all the necessary resources to solve the problem. You don't have any limitation. You have the people, you have the time, you have the right colors, you have the right images to build. You have everything. But now that you have everything to solve the problem, tell me, how are you going to solve the problem? Because in that particular mindset, you will start to see what are the real building blocks that you have to join together. And normally, when you end the construction, you will realize that you don't need resources, that you don't need the colors, that you don't need many different people. You only need to focus and to believe in yourself that you have the capability to solve the problem, not to find the scarcity.
Absolutely. because it's easier. And I think this is the part that mindset is really important. I don't know when or how. I just know that was a moment in time that I realized that, for instance, watching the news every day as soon as you get up in the morning wasn't the best thing for my mindset.
No,
Might not be for everyone.
absolutely.
And I think it was 12, way before, no, 14 years ago. In UK, you have a thing that you pay for. It's called TV license. And I realized that if I'm not watching any news anymore, I should start there. So if I cancel TV license, then I can't watch live TV. And it was the best thing that I've done for my mindset. And I think it had a massive impact on my hello. He's great. When we see the family members, he's just great. And hopefully he's not shy. So it is very important to see that the mindset can start from small things, your habits in the morning. And that is something we can mold our children to have better habits. And we see people like Steve Jobs. He created one of the wonders of technologies that we currently use. And he mentioned, my children do not have access to an iPad or an iPhone. They don't need that in certain moments in time when they're growing up. Afterwards, when they're teenagers and they need to do some work and they need to be communicating, that's one thing. But most of it was done out of curiosity, creativity, and that's the key that we need to mold and not inculcate, but give them a mirror image of what we're doing. Because if we change, they'll change as well. That's where mindset is really, really important in understanding the habits behind it, the impact it has, how you can then, instead of removing something, replacing by something better. For example, books. My son started reading books like no other. He could get these thick novels that he loves so much, and he would read it within a week. And for me, that was more encouraging than watching TV. So the TV license money and the extra channels here and there were put into good use by buying books. And parents can see that change. If they can make changes within themselves, the kids will follow. And for them as well is a change. Yeah.
Yes. And the last one, the last step is human connection, because this is the most important, to teach them to value the relationship, the emotional intelligence, to value the connection with the people, because then they will understand how they can find the right way to solve or to understand what are they going to be in the future, the way you are helping them to create the new education environment for them. And I use here a purpose-driven mindset to find out what are the 3 keys to improve human connections. The first one, from my point of view, is lead with empathy. And we have been talking about that a few minutes ago, and is to encourage them to put themselves in others' shoes. Because then when they start to realize that, they will say, very important. For example, yesterday my wife she ordered something from the store, because she's doing cakes like an art. She's an architect, and she builds cakes.
Oh, great.
Using the views and
well, it's a great use of her degree, definitely, because there's a lot of architecture in maintaining cake shops.
And I was with her 2 days ago to the store, and she bought something, but yesterday she realized that there was something missing, and she called the store, and the store said, yes, we have the thing that you buy here, and what do you want? And I said, can you send it to me back? And they said yes, but who will pay for the person that will bring you the missing part? And she said, who's supposed to pay? Because I went to the store and you forget to put into the bag. And they said yes, but the mistake was from the person that put the things in the bag and she will pay. And my wife said, no, I will pay for the for the for the
For the
for the
delivery.
shipping. And she told me that I know that this small amount of money maybe is one day for that people to live, and I will pay that. So this is something very important to teach them to put in the shoes of the people that we are dealing with, because sometimes we don't
Absolutely.
know what is happening, but if we try to do that, that will save time and save maybe one life.
Yes, and I believe that is the impact probably that you have in aviation. If
Yeah.
you have, let's say, worst case scenario, someone drunk, completely hallucinating in a plane, to the risk of, let's say, 100 people, yeah. So what is the impact of not having empathy and try to calm down the person that is having those moments, instead of saying, for example, if you don't stop, we have to restrain you straight away. Maybe there is other ways. I'm just saying from my perspective. Obviously, I've never been in that position where I needed to restrain someone in a plane. But just having that thought that we don't know what is going through people's minds,
Yeah.
having empathy could be the solution rather than escalating to a more rebellious situation.
Yes.
Those scenarios, the scenario that you gave from your wife, she understood that if the store was not willing to be responsible for the delivery, you shouldn't be at the account of the assistant,
Yeah.
because there is a fall, like a domino effect
Yeah.
to that family. And this is, I think, more and more we talk about it, but less and less we see it sometimes, and that's the concern. And we talk more around since COVID happened, for instance.
Yeah.
I thought we would be so empathetic from now on. We're going to respect nature. We're going to respect our neighbors. We are going to try and come together more easily. And when you see situations like the one your wife had to go through, you think, where is the empathy there?
Yeah.
When it's a business run by someone else, why would I impact my employees? My employees should be looked after.
Yeah.
I look after that customer because she'll come back again.
Mm.
So even for your wife, probably in the future, she's thinking, I might find all the resources there, but if there's another store similar, maybe I'll go to the other store that doesn't cause impact
Yes. Yes.
on employees.
You never know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's really, really interesting perspective.
And another key to improve human connection will be to start building open conversations to discuss about the feelings, the emotions. In the past, in my case, when I was a kid, I I don't remember that my father or my mother asked me, what do you feel? Because this is something that was not important. But today, and taking into account that you mentioned COVID-19, this is like the whole world was out of the comfort zone, and we lost our structure, and the people that doesn't have a good structure underneath, they lose control. And now we have to help people to recover their power, and to to build the right structure with the Lego bricks, to give them the sensation and the feeling that they have the right power to decide what they want to do in the future.
In the future. And we can see the massive impact of, and I think part of our educational careers pathway was identifying which careers were more impacted. And I think people didn't realize with COVID, we noticed there were roles that could not be removed. People needed to be in them, like healthcare, like teaching, like transportation. Majority of those people in those roles had to be in those roles. Engineering, construction, some of them were ongoing because it was required to maintain the structure of the country. So this is where I start thinking all those components put together, including empathy, including exponential mindset, including having all the values required. Now, how can we mold that to say, okay, parents, be aware of future careers that can collapse, just given a virus, just given a changing environment, and how can you support your child to be all-rounded with all those skills so they can build themselves to the next level. And I think that's the most important. And I would ask you this, with all the bricks that we put together just in this conversation, what are the possible careers of the future where people will be more inclined to support their children without directly and completely, but to see where they can get the most out of future careers?
Wow. So, I don't know if this is a career, but this is what I'm doing, to teach people how to learn how to solve big problems. Because when you understand how to solve big problems, you understand how to ask the right questions. And when you know what is the right question to ask, and based on that, you will find the real problem, and then you will be able to find the right solution. And when you have this thing together, and with strong information and the right mindset to act in that way, you will find the right career, because that will depend on what are you willing to do based on your purpose-driven mindset. And then, because everybody has a purpose, and if we can teach them what is the real purpose of each one inside their family, that will be very helpful for all of them to ride the right way, to motivate, to lead, to help, to find the real education environment.
That is the perfect answer for many reasons. You didn't give a specific answer whether it's this career or the other. It is how you can discern for yourself what is the best career based on questioning and finding the right pathway that is solution driven. So whatever that person decides, this is the solution I want to solve, that's the career they should take on board.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That is really beautiful to hear. Definitely.
So my final words, parents, I challenge you to take action today. Start by having a conversation with your child. Ask them about their dreams, their fears, and their aspirations. Listen actively. Then guide them using the principle we have already discussed. Remember, it is not about having all the answers. It is about asking the right questions.
That is, it does sum up all the conversation we've been having. I could not ask for a better conversation to take place, especially nowadays where change needs to be from within the household before we talk about changing the bigger picture, the bigger education. So you nailed it. Start having those conversations earlier on. I think we had our first chat. We had that conversation about how early should parents start having certain conversations with their children, especially when it comes to their strengths, but also the potential they have within themselves, the way they can see the world. And I believe I mentioned something when they start going to school, which here is age 4. And you said it can be even earlier, isn't it? Because we can mold the child even earlier than that through our conversations, also how we have dynamics in school. So it's really beautiful to see that we can come together, different career prospects. You started with the aerospace, and now we're talking about how we can mold the young generations to become the best versions of themselves without limitation. And that is something to take with us for a long, long time.
Okay, that's it.
I really appreciate, and I hope we have more discussions in the future.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye. Bye.